I still remember the sound of the door closing behind me. It was not loud. It was only a small click. But in my heart, it felt like the end of a whole lifetime. When my daughter-in-law told me it was time for me to leave, I did not cry. I smiled instead. Not because I was happy, but because I did not want my grandson to see tears in my eyes. Some people think strength is loud. They think strength is fighting back or raising your voice. But the kind of strength I learned was very quiet. It was the kind that sits in silence and keeps breathing. That morning, I packed only one small suitcase. Inside it were a few dresses, an old photograph, and a book I had carried with me for many years. The pages were soft from being opened so many times. Whenever life felt heavy, I would read a few lines and remind myself that freedom sometimes begins with loss. I did not know where I would go after I stepped outside. I only knew I could not stay where I was no longer welcome. The house behind me was full of memories: birthdays, warm dinners, laughter at the table, and quiet nights when I rocked my grandson to sleep. Leaving it felt like leaving a piece of my own heart. The street was calm that morning. A light wind moved the trees. Somewhere far away, a dog barked once, and then everything became silent again. I stood there holding my suitcase, wondering how a person can feel so full of memories and so empty at the same time. I was not always this quiet woman. There was a time when my life was full of movement, dreams, and bright hope. There was a time when I believed family meant forever. And there was a time when love felt simple and safe. But life has a gentle way of changing our stories. Not all at once, just little by little, until one day you wake up and nothing looks the same. This is the story of how I arrived at that quiet morning. It is a story about family, mistakes, forgiveness, and the long road back to peace. And if you listen closely, you may hear a small truth hidden between the pauses. Sometimes losing a home is the first step toward finding yourself again. Before that morning came, my life was very simple. Not perfect, but calm in a way that made each day feel safe. I woke up early, even when I did not need to. I have always liked the quiet hours before sunrise. The world feels honest at that time. No noise. No pretending. Just soft light and slow breathing. I would make tea and stand near the kitchen window. The same window where I later said goodbye without words. Back then, I did not know how precious those small moments were. I thought life would always stay the same. My son used to live in that house with me. He was a gentle boy when he was young, quiet like his father, kind in ways that did not need to be spoken. After his father passed away, it was just the two of us. We learned how to live around the empty space at the table. Some nights we talked about memories. Other nights we simply ate in silence and understood each other without words. I worked many small jobs to raise him. Cleaning offices, helping in a bakery, watching other people as children so I could buy his school books. None of it felt heavy at the time. When you love someone deeply, work becomes just another way of saying, "I am here for you." Years passed quietly. He grew taller. His voice became deeper. And one day, he told me he had met someone special. I remember the way his eyes looked that evening. Bright, hopeful, almost like when he was a little boy showing me a drawing from school. But before we continue, I want to extend a very specially invitation to you. Subscribe the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories, and comment down below which city you are watching us from right now. Let's continue. Her name was Anna. She was polite when we first met. Soft voice, careful smile. She brought flowers the first time she came to our home. I wanted to love her immediately. Not because I had to, but because she made my son happy. And a mother's heart always moves toward the place where her child feels joy. Their wedding was small and warm. Nothing fancy. Just close family simple food, and quiet laughter. I remember watching them hold hands and thinking, now his life will be easier than mine was. That thought alone brought me peace. After the wedding, they moved into the house with me. It felt natural. The rooms were full again. There was music sometimes, cooking smells in the evening, 2 voices talking instead of one. For a while, everything truly was good. We shared meals. We watched television together. On Sundays, we walked slowly through the park near our street. Then came the day my grandson was born. And that day felt like sunlight entering every corner of my life. When I first held him, he was so small that I was almost afraid to breathe. His fingers wrapped around mine without knowing who I was. But in that moment, I already knew. I would love him for the rest of my life. The house changed after he arrived. Not in a bad way. Just fuller, louder, alive with tiny sounds and soft crying in the night. I helped as much as I could. Washing clothes, cooking soup, walking the floor with him when he would not sleep. I did these things quietly, not to be thanked, but because caring for family felt as natural as breathing. Anna seemed grateful in those early days. She would smile at me across the kitchen. Sometimes she would say, I don't know what we would do without you. Those words warmed my heart more than she could ever know. If life had stayed like that, this story would be very short. Just a peaceful memory of 3 generations living under one roof. But peace, I have learned, can be as fragile as thin glass. And sometimes the first crack is so small, you almost cannot see it. The changes did not come suddenly. They arrived slowly, like quiet clouds gathering in a clear sky. At first, it was only small silences. Moments when Anna's smile did not reach her eyes. Times when conversations ended too quickly. Nothing you could point to and call a problem. So I told myself not to worry. Families need time to adjust. Love needs patience. And patience was something I believed I had plenty of. I did not know then how much patience life was about to ask from me. The first change was so small that I almost missed it. It happened in the kitchen on an ordinary afternoon. I was making soup the way my son had always liked it. Slowly, with care, tasting it again and again so the salt would be just right. Anna walked in and watched me for a moment. Her face was calm, but something in her eyes felt distant. She said, very gently, You don't have to cook every day. I can do it myself. Her words were polite, kind even, but I felt as if I had stepped into a room where I no longer knew my place. I smiled and nodded. Of course, I told her. I was only trying to help. She said nothing more, just opened the refrigerator and began moving things around, quietly. The sound of the soup boiling behind me suddenly felt too loud. That night, we still ate together. My son talked about work. Anna listened. I stayed mostly silent, watching the steam rise from our plates. Nothing was wrong. And yet, something was different. Like a chair in the room had moved slightly, even though no one touched it. Days passed. Then weeks. Small moments like that began to appear more often. Anna started doing more things on her own. Laundry, cooking, taking care of the baby without asking for help. At first, I thought she simply wanted to feel confident as a mother. And I respected that. Every woman deserves to grow into her own strength. So I stepped back, quietly, carefully, trying not to be in the way. But stepping back can be a lonely movement. No one notices the distance growing. Not even the person who is slowly disappearing from the center of the room. I began spending more time in my bedroom, reading, folding old clothes, looking through photo albums I had not opened in years. Sometimes I would hear laughter from the living room. My grandson, a small voice. Anna speaking softly. The television playing in the background. I wanted to walk in and join them, but something inside me hesitated. A feeling I could not fully explain. So I stayed where I was, listening from the other side of the wall, telling myself this was normal, telling myself families change as children grow. One evening, my son knocked gently on my door. He sat beside me on the bed, the way he used to when he was young. For a moment, I saw the same gentle boy he had always been. "Mom," he said quietly, "Anna feels like she doesn't have enough space to be the mother she wants to be." His voice was careful, almost apologetic, as if he were carrying words that did not fully belong to him. I nodded slowly. "I understand," I told him, "and I will try to give her that space." He looked relieved. He hugged me before leaving the room. That hug lasted only a few seconds, but I held on to it long after he was gone. After that night, I tried even harder to stay invisible. I woke earlier so I would not disturb anyone. I cleaned quietly when the house was empty. I spoke less during meals. No one asked me to do these things, but sometimes love makes you disappear, because you believe your silence will protect someone else's happiness. Months passed like soft footsteps, almost impossible to hear, almost impossible to stop. My grandson began to walk. His tiny steps filled the house with joy. Whenever he saw me, his face lit up like morning sunlight. He would reach his arms toward me and say, "Grandma." That one word kept my heart warm during many quiet days. But even that simple happiness began to change. Slowly, gently, like everything else. Anna started calling him from across the room when he came to me. "Come here," she would say. "Stay with Mommy." Her voice was not angry, just firm, like someone drawing a line that only she could see. I always let him go. Of course I did. A child belongs first to his parents. I knew that. I respected that. Still, each time he turned away, a small empty space opened inside my chest. I never spoke about these feelings. Not to my son. Not to anyone. Some emotions are too quiet for words. Then came the conversations about the future. Practical things. Money. Space in the house. Plans that did not seem to include me. They spoke softly in the evenings, thinking I could not hear. But old houses carry sound in strange ways. Whispers travel through walls like slow wind. I never listened on purpose, but sometimes the words reached me anyway. Maybe it would be better. She could stay somewhere comfortable. More independence for everyone. Nothing cruel. Nothing direct. Just gentle sentences filled with careful distance. Those were the moments when I first felt real fear. Not loud fear. Not sudden. Just a quiet understanding growing in the dark. I began to realize that love inside a family does not always disappear with anger. Sometimes it fades politely. So politely that no one knows how to stop it. One rainy afternoon, I stood at the window watching water slide down the glass. The house was silent. My grandson was asleep. Anna had gone out for groceries. I remember thinking, if one day they ask me to leave, I must not make it harder for them. The thought came gently, almost peacefully, and that frightened me more than anything else, because it meant a part of my heart was already preparing to say goodbye. The moment that changed everything was still waiting ahead. And when it finally came, it arrived not with shouting, but with a calm voice that made the world feel suddenly unfamiliar. The day it finally happened looked completely ordinary. There was no sign that anything important was waiting for me. No strange feeling in the air. No warning in my heart. Morning came the same way it always did. Quiet light through the curtains. The soft sound of my grandson talking to himself in his room. Dishes gently touching in the kitchen. I remember thinking how peaceful everything felt. How normal. How safe. Sometimes life becomes the most fragile. Right before it breaks, Anna asked if we could talk that afternoon. Her voice was calm, careful, almost kind. I wiped my hands on a small towel and sat across from her at the table. The same table where we had shared so many meals, so many birthdays, so many simple evenings that once felt endless. My son was there too. He did not look at me right away. His eyes stayed on his hands, folded together like he was holding something heavy inside them. In that moment, I already knew. Not the words, but the meaning behind them. A mother can feel these things, even before they are spoken. Anna began slowly, choosing each sentence with great care. We've been thinking about what might be best for everyone. Her voice was gentle, so gentle that it almost sounded like kindness. I nodded, encouraging her to continue, because stopping her would only make it harder. She spoke about space, about independence, about how young families sometimes need to build their own rhythm. Every word was polite, respectful, wrapped in softness so it would not sound like rejection. But the truth inside those words was clear. They wanted me to leave, not because of anger, not because of a fight, simply because my presence no longer fit the life they were trying to build. When she finally said it directly, her voice was barely above a whisper. Maybe it would be better if you stayed somewhere else, somewhere comfortable, where you could rest and have your own space. Rest, comfort, space. Such beautiful words, to carry such a quiet goodbye. For a moment, no one moved. The clock on the wall ticked softly, counting seconds that felt much longer than time. I looked at my son. He still could not meet my eyes. And that was the moment my heart understood. This decision had already been made. There was nothing left to discuss, nothing left to hold on to. I felt many emotions at once. Sadness, of course. A deep, slow sadness like winter entering the body. But also something unexpected. A strange calm. Like standing very still in the middle of a storm. Because when the thing you fear the most finally arrives, there is nothing left to fear. I took a slow breath. My hands rested quietly in my lap. And I heard my own voice speak, as if it belonged to someone older and wiser than me. If this is what you both believe is best, I said softly, then I understand. Anna looked relieved. My son looked broken. And I felt suddenly very tired. No one asked when I would go. But silence answered the question for us. Soon, we sat together a little longer. 3 people connected by love, and separated by something none of us knew how to fix. Then my grandson woke from his nap and called out from his room. That small voice filled the house with life one more time. I stood up automatically, the way I always had. But Anna rose first. "I'll get him," she said gently. I nodded and sat back down. Because some roles in life end quietly, without anyone announcing they are over. That evening, I packed my suitcase. Slowly, carefully, folding each piece of clothing like it still belonged somewhere. I chose only what I truly needed. A few dresses, warm socks, old photographs that held more weight than anything else. Every object carried a memory, and every memory whispered, "You once belonged here." Packing is a strange kind of goodbye. You touch your whole life, one small piece at a time. When I finished, the room looked almost untouched, as if I had never lived there at all. That hurt more than I expected. Before sleeping, I walked quietly to my grandson's room. The door was slightly open. A soft night light glowed beside his bed. He was breathing slowly, one small hand resting near his cheek. So peaceful, so safe. I stood there for a long time, memorizing the sound of his breathing, the shape of his tiny fingers, the feeling of love filling my chest. Even while my heart was breaking, I wanted to hold him, just once more. But I did not, because love, real love, does not take what is no longer offered. So I whispered instead, so softly that even the night could barely hear. Be happy, my sweet boy. That is all I ever wanted for you. Then I closed the door halfway and walked back to my room. Morning came too quickly. Light through the window. Birds somewhere far away. A new day that felt nothing like new. I carried my suitcase to the front door. My son stood beside it, silent. Anna waited near the kitchen, holding my grandson. No one cried. No one argued. Some goodbyes are too deep for noise. I put on my coat. My hands trembled only a little. I was proud of that small strength. When I reached for the door handle, my grandson suddenly stretched his arms toward me. Grandma, he said. Just one word. But inside it was my whole world. I held him close, breathing in the soft scent of his hair, trying to store that moment somewhere time could never touch. Then I gave him back, because I had to. And with a small, quiet click, the door closed behind me. When the door closed behind me, I did not turn around. Some goodbyes become heavier if you look at them twice. So I walked forward instead. One slow step, then another, holding my suitcase in a hand that suddenly felt much older than the day before. The street looked the same as always. The same trees, the same quiet houses, the same sky stretching gently above everything. And yet nothing felt familiar anymore. Because home is not only walls and windows. Home is the place where someone waits for you. And that morning, no one was waiting. I did not cry while I walked. Tears sometimes need privacy. They wait until the world becomes quiet enough to hold them. At the end of the street, there was a small bus stop. I had passed it thousands of times in my life, without ever imagining I would stand there, with nowhere certain to go. I sat on the cold bench and placed my suitcase beside me. Cars moved past slowly. People inside them were beginning their ordinary day. Work, school, errands, simple plans that felt very far away from me. For a moment, I wondered how a whole lifetime could change between one sunset and one sunrise. But life does not stop to answer questions. It only keeps moving forward, quietly asking us to follow. I had one place in mind, a small apartment owned by an old friend from church. We had not spoken often in recent years, but kindness has a long memory. When I called her, my voice trembled only a little. She did not ask many questions. She simply said, "Come, I will make tea." Those 5 words felt like someone gently opening a door inside my chest. The bus ride was short, but it felt like traveling between 2 different lives. Outside the window, familiar streets passed by like old photographs. Places where I had once walked with my son. Shops where I had bought birthday cakes. Corners where ordinary happiness had quietly lived. I watched them disappear behind me, without knowing if I would ever return. When the bus stopped, my friend was already waiting near the sidewalk. Her coat was too thin for the cold, but her smile was warm enough to hold both of us. She hugged me without speaking, and that silence was the first place I felt safe again. Her apartment was small, just 1 bedroom, a simple kitchen, and a window that looked toward a quiet tree. Nothing special, nothing grand. But peace does not need much space. That first evening, we sat at the table drinking tea. Steam rose slowly between us, soft like breathing. She did not ask why I had come. She did not ask how long I would stay. Some people understand that questions can wait when a heart is tired. That night, I lay on a narrow bed in the corner of the room. Everything felt unfamiliar. The sounds, the shadows, even the silence was different. I expected sleep to stay far away, but sadness can be exhausting. And sometime before morning, I drifted into the deepest sleep I had felt in many months. When I woke, sunlight was touching the wall beside me. Soft, gentle, almost careful not to disturb anything. For a few seconds, I did not remember where I was. Then the memory returned. Slowly, like winter light entering a room. I waited for pain to arrive with it. But something else came instead. Quiet. Not empty quiet. Not lonely quiet. Just stillness. Like the world was giving me permission to breathe again. The days that followed were simple. Very simple. I helped my friend with small chores. We cooked together. Sometimes we walked slowly to the nearby park and sat on a wooden bench watching children play. No one there knew my story. To them, I was only an older woman, enjoying the afternoon sun. And strangely, that felt peaceful, because pain becomes lighter when it is not the only thing people see. Of course, I thought about my grandson every day. Love does not disappear just because distance appears. Sometimes I would imagine the sound of his footsteps in the hallway, the way he said grandma, like it was the most natural word in the world. Those memories hurt, but they also warmed me. And slowly, I began to understand something important. Love is not measured by how close we stand to someone. Sometimes, the purest love is the one that steps back quietly, so another life can grow. This understanding did not arrive all at once. It came gently, day by day, breath by breath. Healing, I learned, is not a sudden miracle. It is a slow return to the person you were before the world became too heavy. Weeks passed, then months. Winter softened into spring. The tree outside the window grew small green leaves where empty branches had been. I watched that change carefully because it reminded me that endings are rarely the final truth. Life continues in ways we cannot always see at first. One quiet afternoon, while folding laundry near the window, I felt something unexpected inside my heart. Not sadness, not grief, but space. A gentle, open space where pain had once lived. And in that space, there was room again for something soft and new. Hope. Very small, very quiet, but real. I realized then that losing a home had not ended my story. It had only turned the page to a chapter I never planned to read. And for the first time, since that morning at the door, I allowed myself to wonder, not about what I had lost, but about what kind of peace might still be waiting ahead. The final part of my story is not about sorrow. It is about understanding, forgiveness, and the gentle way life sometimes gives back meaning after everything feels gone. Spring arrived slowly that year. Not all at once, just small signs, easy to miss if you were not paying attention. The tree outside the window grew fuller each morning. Birds returned to its branches and filled the air with soft, careful songs. Children's laughter drifted from the park nearby. Life was moving forward, even when my heart was still learning how. I began to take longer walks alone. At first, only to the corner, then to the park. And one day, without planning it, I walked farther than I had in many months. There was a quiet strength growing inside me. Not the strength of holding on, but the strength of letting life be what it is. I no longer asked myself why everything had happened. Some questions do not carry answers that bring peace. And peace, I had learned, is more valuable than understanding. Instead, I focused on small, gentle things. Morning tea, warm sunlight on my hands, the sound of pages turning in a book. Little moments that ask nothing from us, except to be noticed. One afternoon, as I returned from the park, my friend was standing near the door with a soft, uncertain smile. "There is a letter for you," she said. My heart moved quickly for the first time in a long while. Not with fear, but with something fragile like hope trying to remember its own name. The envelope was simple. My name writ in a familiar hand. A hand I had known since it first learned to hold a pencil. I sat down before opening it, because some moments deserve stillness. Inside was a short letter from my son. The words were careful, honest in a quiet way. He wrote that the house felt different without me, too quiet in places that once felt warm. He wrote that he finally understood how much love can live inside ordinary days. And at the end, he wrote only one sentence that truly mattered. "I hope one day you can forgive me." I read that sentence many times, not because I was unsure of its meaning, but because my heart was listening to something deeper than words. Forgiveness is a strange thing. People think it arrives after long thinking, after anger fades, after pain disappears. But real forgiveness is often already waiting quietly inside love. And I had never stopped loving my son, not for a single moment. So forgiveness did not feel like a decision. It felt like breathing. That evening, I wrote back. My hands were steady. My heart was calm. I told him I had never been angry, only sad for a little while. And even that sadness had slowly turned into understanding. At the end of my letter, I wrote, "My door is always open to you, even if I no longer live in the same house." Weeks passed again, softly, patiently. Then one Sunday afternoon, there was a gentle knock at the apartment door. Not loud, not hurried, just quiet like someone hopping not to disturb the air. When I opened it, my son was standing there, and beside him, holding his hand, was my grandson. For a moment, none of us spoke. Some reunions are too full of feeling for words. Then my grandson looked up at me and smiled. The same sunlight smile I remembered. "Grandma," he said. One word. Simple. Whole. And just like that, every distance between us became smaller than love. I knelt down and held him close, breathing in the warmth of a moment I had once feared was gone forever. But love, I was learning, has a quiet way of finding the road back home. We did not talk about the past that day. We did not search for perfect explanations. Instead, we sat together at a small table, drinking tea in gentle silence, the same way healing often begins. Outside the window, spring sunlight rested softly on the world. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic, just peace. Real peace rarely arrives with noise. It comes quietly and stays. As evening came, my son hugged me before leaving, longer than he had in many years. And in that embrace, I felt something mend that words could never repair. When the door closed behind them, I did not feel empty this time. I felt grateful. Grateful for love that survived distance, for forgiveness that asked for nothing in return, for the quiet strength that grows when life changes us in ways we never expected. I am I'm older now. My days are simple. My world is smaller than it once was. But my heart is wider because I finally understand something I wish I had known much earlier. Home is not the place where you stay forever. Home is the love you carry, even when you must walk away. And sometimes, losing one door is the only way to see another one gently opening ahead.